Can we get a roll call, please?
Margie Davy. Lisa Marone.
Present.
Megan LaFond.
Present.
Vic Oliver.
Here.
Brad Spanbauer.
Here.
Lakeisha Hayes.
Present.
And then I don't have Jacob, what's your last name?
Last name is Claymeyer.
Okay, Jacob Claymeyer.
Yeah.
Okay. 6 present.
All set? Okay.
Thank you.
And seeing no public comment, we will move on to approval of the December 4th minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Go for it.
Okay.
Can you call the
And-
roll for that?
Do we need a final, vote for that, or?
Yeah, you can just do it all in favor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we're moving on to the City of Oshkosh ARPA Fund Applications Solicitation Discussion.
Great, well, thank you. For those who don't know me, I'm Mark Roloff, I'm the city manager, and I wanted to take an opportunity to fill you in on some of the direction that council has given me. It actually dates back a couple years, but kind of been reinforced to solicit grant proposals from community groups regarding use of American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds. The council had adopted a policy. Oh, thank you for doing that,
No
Brandon.
problem. Do you want the mouse?
No, you're doing quite well.
Okay.
That's fine. The city had received about $20.5 million as this, as you can see on that sheet, and the council had set aside 25% of it for nonprofit entities and non-infrastructure purposes, and then the other 75% was for infrastructure purposes. We have to commit those funds by federal law by the end of 2024. So that's commit, not necessarily spend. Our goal is to have it spent by the end of '24, but it's not a requirement. And the only reason is if I give if I get an application and the city gives a grant to XYZ nonprofit for $100,000, and then they come back and say, well, we don't think we can spend it all, or we can't do it, we can't fulfill it, and it's after December 31st, 24, then those funds have to get recommitted, and it's not allowed. So it's really about just trying to make sure that we don't leave any of these funds on the table. So that's kind of why the preference is there. So we're looking for, the council is, I've given them some long-term and short-term goals, which are on the second page. If, Brandon, you could go to that, because that's kind of the general guidelines. It's the short-term goals, and this has to do with more COVID-19. Help those with immediate needs, directly impacted by COVID-19, of course compliant with the federal regs, politically acceptable, meaning something that is community-based, that the council believes, based on their being the representatives of the people, that they feel is important. Any opportunity to leverage ARPA funds with other revenue sources, and of course avoid duplication of effort with other agencies and of duplication of other ARPA funds. And then the long-term goals, the council has an adopted strategic plan. In fact, that's just where I came from. We had a little focus group today with some citizen members. Long-term visible impact, long-term benefit, and long-term relief. The idea is that ARPA funds are being funded primarily with federal debt, so make sure it has some long-term impact. One of the things that we had done an initial solicitation, and the council approved about $2.7 million in funds of that $5 million that was allocated for nonprofits. So there's about $2.3 million left, give or take. The idea was that, we thought we were going to we did get a lot of funding requests, but some of them were for some things that didn't necessarily meet this criteria. Then the other fear we had, and I think it's come to pass, is that some of the impacts of COVID have taken longer to come realize themselves. And so I think there was some wisdom in holding off on that. And the council asked me to go out and do a re-solicitation because they just didn't want to take, I think, piecemeal requests. They wanted to take a look at the totality of what needs are out there. So we're going through a solicitation. The deadline, the due date is at the end of this month, March 1st. However, if we don't have a sufficient number of applications, then I certainly would inform council that and extend the deadline. But the idea is to kind of retake the pulse of the community in terms of what needs are out there. So the council had specifically by policy said, let's go to our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. But I also felt it was probably appropriate that the Sustainability Advisory Board take a look at this as well. And I certainly welcome any thoughts, happy to answer any questions you might have. If I can help demystify it, there's an application that is there, and there's a link. This is all on our website, and I believe this is in your application package, so you can click on either the application to get to the funding criteria or click on the funding criteria to get the application. It works either way. But the idea is to identify what you would be able to use the money for. The first round was primarily capital based, and it wasn't. There was a preference towards capital mainly because we didn't want to put ourselves in a situation where an organization was coming to us for just regular operating funds. But if there are some projects that involve some operating funds to help bridge until additional funding become available, to bridge a specific challenge that exists right now and you're hoping to help alleviate it so that either another community group can take over or it bridges this problem until it's solved and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. One of the allocations we made in our first round was for AdvoCap, and that was really for people seeking assistance in either rental relief or pretty much counseling on how to avoid evictions. And that was certainly one of those criteria, several of the criteria getting met with that. And that was 100% for operating funds. But the idea was there were some specific needs going on in the community right then and there that needed to get addressed. So it was appropriate to use operating funds in that case. And to the degree there's other operating needs, I certainly think we need to entertain those. So we'd ask that you, in the application, explain what short-term needs that you're trying to meet to get there. So that's kind of it. I guess I'd just be happy to turn over for any questions. Certainly if you have any sustainability bent to any of your questions, that's what you exist for, so that's okay. But I'm happy to answer any questions. And afterwards, if you think about it on the way home tonight, I think there's email address for questions, citymgr@oshkoshwi.gov. Send me a question, please, and I'm happy to answer those things. We're going to be having some information sessions next week, and let's see, do I have that on there yet? I don't think I do, so let me share them with you. I apologize.
I have them if you.
Oh, you got them? Oh, great.
So
okay.
February 15th at 6.
That sounds about right.
February 16th at 10.
Yes.
And at 2.
Yeah, and at 2 p.m. is going to be our virtual information session. So it's going to be sort of live where you can mail in questions, and we'll just do a Q&A right then and there. I just did this for another project that the council has me working on, and it was great. I mean, we had those sessions each lasted an hour and a half.
A special assessment?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So it was really something. So to the degree that if you're aware of a group, have them tune in. They'll all be on Oshkosh Media. They'll be replayed on Oshkosh Media as well. So anyway, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So what jumps out right away for the ARPA funds to me would be a climate resiliency plan or funding for a hazard mitigation plan. And that's something that we could work with the city to implement. Hopefully that could be a city-owned document. Hazard mitigation, climate resiliency plans are something that's done throughout the state. Updating the sustainability plan is another option. These are just long-term plans that I think align with the city goals. I guess a question I have would be for the application, do you want us as volunteers to fill out the application, or is this something that the city, specifically Brandon or Emma, would be filling out?
I would think that the SAB is served very well by some very capable people. And I think, and we can work with the staff on that type of thing. I think you create the vision, which I think is partially what this body does. And if you think there's some value to that, I would ask you, not necessarily, it's not necessarily directly COVID related, but you can certainly make a case for how some issues have become exacerbated due to COVID. I think there's a lot of legitimacy for that. And so I think you can certainly do something like that. I'll only repeat that it's got to be committed by the end of the year. Knowing that it's an internal city one, I can keep my eyes and hands on that a lot better to make sure that the spending gets done properly. So I'm not as worried about the spending, it's the committing. So it would be, can you develop the basic guidelines so that you could solicit, because I assume what you're talking about is to find an outside service that would be able to provide that to us.
Yes.
As long as you can get it all together so that we can have a contract signed, that meets the commitment requirement. So I would encourage you, if that's something you want to do, that you can talk about it. And I think just giving the staff the general idea of what you're talking about, I think, within a short amount of time, we can assemble that application. That would, meet the criteria.
I have a clarifying question. Long-term and short-term goals that are identified by the city, do the short-term goals, are they within the long-term goals? For instance, help those directly impacted by COVID-19. Is that only part of the short-term goals? It doesn't apply to the long-term goals?
I think they may or may not directly apply to the long-term goals, and they don't have to.
Okay.
I think the idea was that there are some things that can get done
Immediately. Yeah.
And remember, this is dated about 2.5 years.
Right.
So I think the answer to the question has evolved over that time period as well. So I think SAB, by its very nature, is more long-term oriented.
Right.
You're trying to save something for the future, and so most of it's going to be there. The fact that the number one long-term goal is strategic plan goals, and that we have a sustainability plan that we have referenced in our strategic plan, I really think you're kind of there with it already. So if
So an update to that plan seems pretty reasonable.
I would think that's reasonable. I mean, the council may say, okay, it's not infrastructure, so it's not in the infrastructure half, it's in the non-infrastructure half. And if you reel off the long-term goals, I think what you're talking about with Lisa's question is more about those types of things. But you said updated sustainability plan. What was the other one? The climate?
Climate resiliency plan and then hazard mitigation.
Yeah.
Those are just options that are out there. For the group, I did some research. Other states that have used ARPA funds, so Kansas City used $50,000 to increase tree canopy in their downtown. So then they will plant 100 trees annually. So that's just one example of what they were using. And then the city of Tucson actually used $9 million to enhance their resiliency and sustainability plans. So other communities out there are doing that. Just something to think about if we decide we want to go a different direction.
And I would think that those are good examples in an application. In fact, don't ask me which one applicant it was. Oh no, it was a food co-op. I asked them to, when they made their application. That was one of the recipients for the first round. Show elsewhere in the country where this has been done, and that was like fish in a barrel. It was very common. So it wasn't an unusual request at all. If you can demonstrate that others have done that, that's sort of, okay, that's consistent with intent of ARPA. We haven't been audited yet. I don't expect we'll be audited, but at the same time, I want to make sure we don't get audited. So those types of things, knowing that other communities have done it, but the fact that we have these goals, I think, helps us if we do get audited. Look, here are our criteria that we established, and that this application reflects. So I'd say your focus would be more on the long-term stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to be clear, and I'm not speaking for the entire council, but I think one of the questions that may arise with council is just making sure that it's not something that, not violates, because that seems so strong, that kind of runs.
Consistent?
Make sure that it's consistent in that it's not already intertwined with the city's obligation. So I know that funds have been designated infrastructure and then the organization and nonprofit. So being able to see that this is not something that the city should be using other funds for and would be that may be a problem with council.
Okay.
So
I think, Vic, you might be the only one that was around during the last round of when the sustainability plan was updated last.
Yeah.
So just for your knowledge and everybody else on the board, when that was done, it was done solely by the SAB, correct?
Correct. So we were
I mean-
all assigned chapters, and then at these meetings, we reviewed chapters, and it took a very long time.
So I think to request funding to update that plan with a consultant,
Would be huge and incredibly beneficial.
where it's interdepartmental, maybe you guys, maybe others of the public, it could be maybe a better process, a better document.
Yep.
That's a big ask.
I agree. I just still don't want anyone to be upset. So for instance, even with bid, the issue is that, well, there's a number of issues, so we won't talk about that. But,
Thank you.
so we won't talk about that one, but I still, just the way that the funds were divvied up initially by council, you may run into an issue with it being approved if it's not an outside organization requesting it. I think if it's SAB requesting that someone comes in to update that plan, that is a city's ask. That's how it may be viewed by council. That it's the city asking for funds that were supposed to go to nonprofit organizations or businesses that are serving the city, instead of city departments serving the city. That's the difference between the two. So it was infrastructure and then nonprofit and organizations. It didn't have to be a nonprofit, but the guidelines say that. And so I don't want anyone to, I got a lot of emails about bid when that was not approved. But understanding the guidelines that were set forth years ago on which organizations and how those funds should be used once it was infrastructure and nonprofit and organizations and businesses.
Good to know.
We may run into an issue
Well, I
with that.
think-
So I just want to make sure that we are able
Emphasize
to
Emphasize
do
the
that.
non-infrastructure part.
Yes.
Go ahead, Brad.
To the point about not duplicating efforts, so it sounds like there's 75% that was allocated to infrastructure, there's 25% that was allocated to this other pot, this other pool of money. Is it that we do not want to duplicate potential efforts among the entirety of the funding, or do you see what I'm saying? Like, could a request be made potentially within the 25% pool that may overlap or be viewed as duplicating in the infrastructure? Does that seem unlikely?
It wouldn't be duplication, but somebody might make the argument, and I know I'm speaking for Lakeisha, but if I'm tracking you, they might argue that shouldn't be taken out of this pool. They might argue it should be taken out of the other pool.
Is the other pool spoken for in its entirety?
No, but we're down to about 600,000, so it's getting a little tight.
Is there a way to see what has been funded and at what measure?
Oh, yeah, we've got a long list.
So you can see what's being funded out of ARPA.
Correct, yeah.
Is that on the city's website?
It is somewhere, but I will make sure, I'll get it to staff and they'll have it sent out to you.
Okay.
I have a question, Lakeisha. If, to the question earlier about the application, if the burden is on SAB to update this plan, okay? So understanding that, and if council understands that, if the application was written and filled out by SAB with the request that this plan needs to be updated, therefore that's why we're asking for funds to get help to finish this plan, does that come across better than if staff was submitting that application? Again, generally
Just
speaking for
thinking-
everybody, but.
Yes, and just thinking about it with, like, right here and right now, without a longer thought process, it may be possible to, I'm trying to think.
I was gonna follow your lead, I was like, you go and I'll.
So just trying to,
You get- I mean, you get
it
kinda what
may
I'm-
be possible that, because, let me start over. The funds can be used by organizations that serve the city of Oshkosh. So, and I'm sorry, I'm probably doing this attorney like puzzle thing in my head and it's not gonna come off very well. So if that is one of the criteria, that it could be an organization or nonprofit that serves the city of Oshkosh, doesn't have to be within the city of Oshkosh, their base or office or anything like that. It may be possible to argue that it is that organization who will be completing or assisting with completing the plans requests to serve the city of Oshkosh with this plan. Am I saying, did that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that lands.
So-
And I was
Okay.
going, then I can add to that,
Yeah.
and so my addition to that would be, one of the things that I've really asked staff to do with the 75%, and I think you'll see that, Brad, is that the idea was that it had to be in our CIP, our capital improvement program. This is not a capital improvement project. Clearly is not a capital improvement project. So it is definitely a non-infrastructure project. And we say nonprofit entities and non-infrastructure purposes. We never said exactly city or not city, we just said non-infrastructure. We have not used, despite what some communities have done, we have not used those funds for operating costs like staffing or anything like that. We wanted to avoid that because we didn't want to be left with, well, now we have to fund this, now that we funded this position for 3 years and now all of a sudden it's gone. And imagine that if we had funded Brad's position, or Brandon's position with ARPA funds, and at the end of 3 years, Brandon, the time's up, my friend, and then we have that dilemma. I didn't want to be in that position.
Sure.
So I think this is a bridge. So, and I'm trying to develop it to develop what your narrative would be, but.
Well, I think the goal of this group would be to alleviate the burden of the update of that plan, create a better plan that then potentially persuades CIP projects in the future.
And community-based initiatives as well,
Correct.
because that's a lot of what the committee does. But I think your point that it was very time-consuming for a volunteer board. And I would also maintain that, and I wish Margie was here because, you know, Margie's carried the water on this for so many years. But we ask more of this committee on staff type of work than any other committee. And I know that part of that is the pride that this group has had over the years, but at the same time, you're volunteers. And to ask that is a big ask.
Right.
So if we're gonna get this done, and if we're committed, and in our strategic plan, we talk specifically about following the sustainability plan. So we make reference to it, but if it needs updating, because how old is it now?
2019?
Okay, so we're getting on 5 years, and what's the going?
About 5
About
years.
5 years is
Yeah.
is pretty much the
Just
best
with the new
practice.
data coming out, yeah.
Yep.
That idea fits really well.
I can look at an application like that, and I think I can be, I can entertain something like this, because it's not infrastructure, and like you said, it could lead to identifying a way to identify projects for infrastructure, so, this is kind of what I was hoping for by coming tonight, so, but, Brandon and Emma are going to be working. So, but the idea is that, but working on application is better
Application
than,
as opposed to.
as opposed to the whole enchilada,
Yeah.
which would just,
It's a lot.
that's a big ask.
It took us a
And,
full year, pretty much.
yeah, well, the fact that a volunteer group did it in a year is,
I think
by
it actually might have
committee.
been 2 years.
Yeah, I
The
think
document
it's
says
over.
2017, and I think it got adopted in 19,
Well,
so.
it also was done and took multiple months to truly be adopted as well. So
Okay.
I would argue more a year and a half,
Okay.
probably, but.
But if you can get the consultant contract signed before 12/31 and have it done through, through part of 24 and into 25, you'll be fine.
Any more?
Just don't cancel the contract, please, whatever you do. Don't cancel it. And that's part of the fear, because let's say you were dissatisfied with the service and you said,
Sure.
Mark, we got to fire these people, they're not any good. Then I might have a little challenge, and I'd fight on your behalf, but it'd be, they didn't like vendor A, they got to go to vendor B. The intent was to commit these funds for a sustainability plan re-up. I'll make the case for you, but I gotta think this through as I'm going through it. But I think if you get the green light, then you can start an RFP.
Right.
Pretty short order,
Yeah.
and get that done.
So it sounds like if this is the path we want to go down, for the application then, we need to identify who that third party is, right? For the
Not in
application by
the
March?
application, no.
Okay, so
no.
it can be a true idea
Just-
still in the application, and then we can vet who we'd like that third-party organization to be
You hire
throughout the year. Okay.
Acme Environmental Consulting,
Sure.
that's fine.
It would go through the normal, if the funding got awarded, it would just go through the normal RFP process.
Okay,
Yeah.
good to know.
I just want that
The application would just say to hire a consultant.
Okay,
to complete
it's
the
just good to
plan.
know how much we need to have done by the.
No, thank you,
End of
because
the
I don't want to put too much pressure on you, yeah, no, not at all.
How
I
much
think-
research am I doing tonight?
And I think given the fact that it's consistent with a strategic plan, what I heard Lisa say was, it's kind of the standard to update these every 5 years. That's a legitimate argument.
It would be great.
So if the application is due March 1st, do we have any volunteers that want to assist in providing the application to Brandon and Emma? It's coming up pretty soon.
I'd be happy to volunteer.
Great. Us three can take, everyone's in, okay, good.
Okay.
Well, would you want staff to work on it and then just kind of put the draft out? Because I think conceptually you understand what the
Yeah.
committee's looking for. I just don't want to do it sometimes by committee. I love committees, don't get me wrong, but sometimes when you're doing something detailed by committee, initiated versus we do the work, we give it to you and you give it comments. And if one of you is busy because you got something going on at work or home and you don't comment, that's cool, we still have an application.
Sounds good.
I like that.
I would say if anybody, or if all of you collectively, it says provide a mission statement / purpose. If everybody wants to take a stab at that, we'll, kind of take everybody's comments and compile them together and come up with the super statement. I'd be okay with that.
Okay, that sounds good.
That's doable.
And Brandon, I mean,
Yeah.
we can talk, but you can also go to the session
Oh, yeah, I
on
plan
the
on it.
15th, just,
Yeah.
okay, get here. No, you don't have to do the 6 o'clock one. You can go to the 2 o'clock one. Oh, well, you can do it.
I'll plan for the 2
It's
o'clock
okay,
one.
you can do it during work hours.
Thank you.
Ooh, wow.
Benevolent, so benevolent, aren't I?
Is there any other questions regarding this for anybody?
Yeah, I have a question for Mark. When you're evaluating these different proposals, will the advisory committee here have a chance to weigh in on which ones maybe align best to these goals, or is that mostly a common council type decision?
It's primarily a staff role, and then we recommend to the council. So I wouldn't necessarily I want you to provide Brandon with as much input as you can, but I'm not going to show you competing proposals and then ask you what you think about a competing proposal. I won't do that, but I think it's appropriate for you, I mean, the council's going to know what the applicants are, and so you'll know who the applicants are, but I think, given the scope of work that you're talking about and the price tag you're talking about, we've got $2.3 million, and you're talking like a $50,000 expenditure. You're not breaking the bank. The smallest grant we've given out so far is $130,000. So, and somebody said, "Oh, so you only want big grants?" No, it's just that we didn't get a lot of small grants. So, and I'd say 50,000. What? Is it medium? Oh, okay.
Standard for a plan.
Yeah, for a plan, yeah, and I think that doesn't shock me when you said it, so.
I'm gonna lean into Brad's comment. I think you were maybe asking that question before, seeing if there's opportunity elsewhere. Like, we know that the new Parks Pavilion was constructed with the ability to have solar on it. So is there funding in the infrastructure side of things where this would be the body to say, hey, don't forget, that roof is constructed in such a way and plumbed and ready for solar. Is this a good opportunity to get solar on that roof? Is that maybe where you were going with that question, Brad, or?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, to some degree, yes, but maybe not with that specific example. But I think
Sure.
it's a great one to, if one concern or item listed in the short and long term goals is to avoid duplication, then anyone applying needs to know what to avoid duplicating. I also think it merits review to see what has been funded, if we are to consider long-term goals that have the most lasting impact for the city for the longest period of time. An investment in renewable energy infrastructure. I appreciate Lisa's point about other cities using the funding to increase urban tree canopy and offset, urban heat island effect and those kinds of things. I mean, that feels like, money well spent where you're getting your ROI.
Yeah. I can tell you that the one that you cited earlier is the solar panels might be a tad bit ambitious to commit by the end of the year, so I'd be a little hesitant. I'm happy to report, though, that one of our infrastructure investments was in trees. Now, the motivation was more about emerald ash borer, but we spent a good $250,000 on tree canopy, on replacement trees. That was matched with some private philanthropic money as well. So we made good use of that. So I'm happy to report that. To the degree there, I would suggest for something like the solar panels, as we start talking about capital improvement projects, that might be some ideas that you can suggest that, in that case, goes to parks. So you guys recommend it, then it goes to Parks Board, and then they can talk about it. Look, this might be something to look at.
Has this been recommended before? I'm sorry, I don't
No.
know the history.
No.
Okay.
I just know that we had gotten a chance to review, this body had gotten a chance to review the building design of the new Parks building as a courtesy. And those developers explained that there was a number of things done in the construction of that, one of them being that it's plumbed ready for EV charging stations and that it's plumbed and ready for solar panels.
Okay.
Anything else I can answer?
No, not on this topic, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what
If you don't mind sticking around for just a second, because the next one is just a staff update, which I wanted to let them know about. That city manager roll-off coincidentally here tonight has SAB on his list of goals for 2024. Again, I'll just read it here for you quick. with the input of council, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and the Sustainability Advisory Board, continue infusing sustainability and DEI concepts into city policy and day-to-day operations. So again, just wanted to let you guys know that that is one of the goals of the city manager this year. So
Is that how it was phrased for 2023 as well?
I think that might have been one of them. Or it was
Yeah,
slightly
the first
different.
one. Okay.
And I can just, thanks for bringing that up, Brandon.
Mhm.
I guess the other thing is there were funds that were put in the 2023 budget, and they have been repeated in the 2024 budget. So to the degree there's some smaller types of work that you need done, that would also be appropriate out of that. That was kind of the compromise when we were struggling with, can we afford a full-time sustainability coordinator? And we couldn't pull that off, but the council still wanted to do some things. So we still have funds. They're not, none of our boards and commissions have a specific budget. So that's just, but that doesn't mean that if there are things you need to get done, and the council specifically was like, we want to be able to, for especially, you know, SAB and DEI, because the nature of their work spreads across really every department. It's sort of, it's like you don't have a specific home like Plan Commission. It's pretty obvious. It's in the planning division. And this one, because everything you do is more broad-based. So that's why there are still funds. I believe it's about $24,000 to the degree you need some minor consulting or something like that. That still exists over and above what Lisa suggested for the ARPA funds.
So that goes to council though for approval for those funds? If we were to need them in the future?
Depending, sometimes it's just me,
Okay.
because it's based on our purchasing policy. So if it's
Sure.
within my realm of approval, I can do it. If I had some questions, I'd probably kick it to council. I think I did take, there was one, and I think I just took it to council anyway because I wanted council to be aware that we were in fact doing it. It didn't require their approval, but I just wanted to let them know,
Awareness.
make them aware so that it wasn't like, well, what have you done towards that goal?
Yeah.
So now I'm at a
That was the
loss.
professional service agreement for Elevate that we're still working through.
What he
It's
said.
it's on,
Okay.
it is on our attorney's desk.
But there is an example of
Sure.
things you say, we still would like to see this done. Again, it goes back to, this board is one of the only boards that does physical work, and I think that that's a big ask for a volunteer group. And to the degree we can identify an outside consultant and you give the parameters of what you're looking for, and you may even have a suggestion on who we can use, or staff might. It's that collaboration. It's not that you should be sitting there typing up a report. I think that's a little much to ask. You're a policy advisory body, not a policy writing body. And we don't do that with any other board or commission. So I don't think you should be burdened with that either.
Well, DEI had to as well.
They did, and again,
It
that
had a
was,
very long time.
but I think, yeah, and it's, I think that's a lot to ask. And then it takes too long.
Another question we had that came up, we're discussing the SAB goals later on at our workshop. Do you have an update on the internal green team, how that progress is going? Is there any follow-up that SAB needs to do to kind of jumpstart that?
Brandon, you want to?
It's in, the last I was told is HR, they put out an email asking the employees who is interested in participating in that, and a number of other internal boards, but that's the last I've heard of it, to be honest.
Yeah, we did not get a big return. I think we shared some optimism that we'd get a much greater
Yeah.
turnout for that. We were successful on the DEI end. We've got a pretty sizable group, and we've had training sessions as a result of the recommendations. I'm not sure what that is, and I welcome your input on it. I am not inclined to say, you are hereby on that committee. I want people to want to be on it. And I don't think I think it's just that they're busy with other things and maybe they don't necessarily make that connection. But yeah, I think Kelly was concerned that there weren't any takers, and I think Michelle and HR told Kelly that, you know, there was one very enthusiastic employee. But in the other departments, there just didn't seem to be all that big an interest in it, so.
I can maybe ask HR to send another email to see if there's, if it sparks anything else. Because I remember we put together like a nice description of what the board would be and.
Yeah, it would just be
What the
nice in
goal
terms
would be,
of,
the
are we
timelines.
keeping this goal for 2024? Are we getting rid of it because it's not taking? What do we need to do?
Yeah, I still think,
overcome
the
it?
DEI training, like we just had it recently, and it was really nice. It would be great if there was some, I think, employee training that was related to sustainability in some capacity.
Yeah.
That was one of our goals too.
And maybe we might have to have that created more by staff rather than a committee. I think the idea with the committee was to be more broad-based and everything, but I'm happy to continue the conversation.
But knowing that you guys have, we can talk about the goal, the SAB goals in the workshop, but I think as city manager, Roloff said that there's some funds available that might steer you guys in one direction rather than another, knowing that you have a little bit of money at play that's potentially could help accomplish something.
And maybe to go off of that comment about DEI and the training, which has been very successful.
It's been great.
To the degree any of you may be aware of some training programs that employers have utilized that you think might be some value, maybe we just go that route rather than worrying about creating a committee. We have a committee here that might be able to offer some suggestions. Maybe that's another way to address that issue rather than say, oh, we don't have a committee, so we aren't going to do anything. Baloney. If we have a committee right here that's very engaged, but so if you're aware of it, maybe you can kick those ideas around and
Yeah, if your employer has provided you guys with any certain types of training that was related to Brad, the director.
no pressure, but yeah, but to the degree you're aware.
Well, that's a good idea. If you're willing to entertain that idea.
If you've
I think
ever
that would be
provided sustainability training to your employees,
great. Would you qualify?
I might.
Right.
Okay.
So is that something we can maybe talk about, Mark?
Yeah, I think we can.
Okay.
All right.
Great, thank you. So now we're moving on to the winter summer farmers market.
I'm going to excuse myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you
Thank
coming.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So yeah, Winters, it sounded like I had talked to Margie before she left, and the Winters Farmers Market, there were no spots available, correct?
Correct.
So we were kind of keen up, this is just, yeah, we were
Alright.
like too late to the party, I guess, right?
Okay.
I
thought we were ready.
So don't need to worry about the Winters Farmers Market.
Okay.
Cool. I think, we just put it on here as winter summer because I wanted to put it in everybody's brains. This is up to you guys if you want to do the summer farmers market, 1, 2, 3, how many do you want to do? Start looking at the dates, and I'm going to keep it on the agenda so we can keep it in our heads and start coming up with ideas about what you maybe want to do there, or what type of information you want to have at that stand, or just, it's kind of up to you guys if you want to, figure out who's going to be there on those days.
Are the dates
Set?
already
Isn't it every Saturday, like the second week in June?
Summer, it's every Saturday.
So but it starts June, first weekend of June,
I think second weekend of June.
second weekend of June?
Yeah.
Okay.
Might be first.
I just didn't know, like, if they have their dates out yet for the year, and I think we would be able to take a spot that's open to like non-profit or other
Yes.
community
nonprofit.
orgs, and I don't know, do they offer that to 3 groups a weekend, 5 groups a weekend, 20 groups a weekend?
June 1st.
Yeah, June 1st is the beginning day.
Margie has a connection with the person who's in charge of the volunteer group, so
Yes, she does.
we will talk to her about how to proceed. I believe we needed to get our insurance approved, and there's a couple other hiccups as well, so.
Would it be beneficial, though, noting that there's a majority of us here, to at least throw some dates on a wall, so to
Yeah.
speak, just to get a pulse on that?
Great idea. Can we bring up a calendar?
Sure.
Yeah, don't know about you guys, but I have a ton of weddings this year, so. We could figure that
I
out.
can be there for probably a majority of them.
Yeah, I think with enough advance notice,
Yeah.
I could make almost kind of any date work, you know, to some degree.
Yeah.
I did pull up a calendar, there on the bottom right-hand side if you need to take a look at
Oh,
it.
sure.
So June 1st, so I mean, there's, again, I don't know how often you guys are thinking about doing this, once a month, 2 times the summer, 3, I mean, it's, you know, I don't, it's a,
Yeah, I mean, personally, I go almost every Saturday. Like as a patron. I would recommend probably once a month would be beneficial. I think you want to be there, you want to be available, but admittedly, again, as someone who goes every week, I frequently skip the thing I see every week. Do you know what I mean? Like, I look for what's new and different, and I would argue that there's a lot of us who do that.
Yeah.
And so you want to be new enough that you're still exciting and engaging to the public, but available enough that just because they weren't available that one Saturday the entire summer, they never get to talk to us. There's a balancing act there.
Proposal.
sure.
What if we did like 3 times, one sort of earlier in the season, mid-season, and then like closer to the end, September, October date?
So June, August, October.
Something like that.
Sounds good.
Okay, hypothetically, June, August.
Hypothetically, assuming there are dates that they will allow us to get a booth.
Okay, that's a good plan. I think my recommendation to you guys would be, kind of to your point, what are you going to do when you're there? I think in the past, Vic, you've done rain barrel demonstrations. I think if like you were, if it was advertised, you know, we could put it out there on the Facebook page and stuff that this farmer's market, SAB is going to do a rain barrel demonstration. Like, you'd probably have a pretty good crowd around that kiosk or whatever you call it. And booth.
Would
Thank
there
you.
be a cost for us to get a rain barrel, or what materials do we need?
I don't have one currently.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I couldn't dig one up for you. It's really the kit. So typically we've supported Kits and File because they're another local company, and purchased them there. Margie has admittedly sourced most of the physical things, and then I just provide the knowledge/education. So
Okay.
I would probably have to partner with her, but we could definitely get something together by June. That's an insane amount of prep time. I've never had this much prep. To pull one of these off.
She and I also attended the Sustainable Communities Network meeting
Nice, you got to
a
go.
week or so ago.
And last Monday in January.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, last Monday. And she, at that meeting, because this was discussed for the NINA city board and their farmers markets, that they do something similar, where they kind of have a demo one set up. There was another township, and now I want to say, was it Greenville? They do it where I think at their farmers market or wherever they're kind of promoting this, they will also kind of get people to sign up, and then they can pick up their the rain barrel from like the city garage, and then they basically pay a small fee. And I don't know if this is something that like their city department is doing, but they basically then go install it for the people, because, you know, I think
That would be really cool.
one thing that I can sort of imagine someone might not be able to do or want to do is have the tools, the know-how, or it just might take them a very long time. That might be a barrier to getting them to actually saying like, yes, I want a rain barrel for my yard. Another thing we could potentially assist them with is doing the water credit, because I know, right, there's a way to calculate getting your credit on your bill for the water, having a rain barrel. So just, I'm throwing these out as like,
Those applications could be there maybe?
yeah, I mean, I think like,
That's what I usually do at the workshops, is like we go through like why this is so important and impactful, and then we actually like drill the holes and like construct all the spigots and whatnot. And then we talk about like how to safely put up your rain barrel. Right, they're very tippy, they fall over. Have little jokes. And then we end with yeah, like, and now there's also like a financial impact as well. Like now that you've gone through all the, like you're here because you truly want to be here, now there's also a financial impact is how my spiel goes.
And maybe you do that every time, if you can, you know, or maybe each time you're there, something's different,
Yeah.
but I think that by itself is a really good idea.
Well,
Yeah.
when we did farmers markets in the past, again, feels weird to be one of the more senior individuals here, but we've also had a really successful one where we literally just talked about the chicken keeping, now duck keeping and beekeeping ordinances, and just talked to people about them and had the actual ordinance and went through it, and you know, like you can have cute little stuff or whatever as well, but that was also really impactful, and we got a lot of response from that. Just to, people were like, oh my god, I could actually have chickens. Like,
There's a ton of chicken permits. I mean, there's a lot
Right.
of people that keep chickens.
Exactly.
I don't know how many, we could easily run a report and find out, but
Yeah.
I would assume like 50.
And that would
At
be
least 50,
pretty cool
yeah.
data, you know, to be able to share as well.
Sure.
Like, you know, you're not gonna be the first one, like there's 50 others of your neighbors that have this, or, you know, look into expanding into ducks and things like that. Yeah, I think there's a really interesting population, so not to like keep plugging local businesses, but, what is it, Sweet Jules Bakes or
Yes.
something, the new bakery in town that's where like hot dog trailers used to be. They actually do at the farmer's market like a duck egg breakfast sandwich thing, and like if we're next to them, like that's another way too that like as a board we can also help promote the local businesses here. Like if you have ducks, like here's something you can do. Like
Right.
just trying to like strategize, but there's.
So
a lot
I'll
of
keep it
ways
on the
to do it.
agenda. I mean, I'm gonna drop winter. The winter
Yes,
part,
please.
the winter
Yes.
part
Drop
was
winter.
the, you know, the
We're
update
done.
that we're not doing it.
Drop winter will be super planned for summer.
That's right.
Yes.
But those are just like a couple ideas that.
Are we going to try and discuss dates now? Do we want to check in with the farmers market folks and see which dates they actually have available for us? Is it early enough that essentially any date is possible?
All of those are good options. I mean, I can reach out to them or one of you can. It doesn't matter to me.
I
I
think
think
if I
Marty
give like
has the connection with the
Yes,
person.
Marky.
and if we can give her maybe just like our month idea, like
Yeah.
every
Yes.
other month of June, August, October, and then, so let's propose that, like if you don't mind Lisa connecting that with Margie or whomever.
Yes.
And then Margie can maybe get us the dates that are still available, to your point, like they do fill up relatively fast, however, they have expanded for groups like us before.
Right,
We have
right.
been last minute in the past and allowed to go.
Yeah.
Way ahead of the game this year. Good job.
Yes, and then it's usually just about like the logistics of getting like physical things there. So like I have one of those like over pop-up tenty things, whatever, for like shade. And then it's like getting a literal table. I also have a 6-foot folding table. Like there's things that we have to like physically, logistically think through too. Yes, it starts at 8. We should all be there by 7:30 to make sure we're set up. Like those types of things we'll wanna, who has what, who can do what. Printing has always been supplied by the city. I assume that's still kosher.
sure.
Okay. So if there's physical things that we want, I obviously know we want to limit paper, but it's a farmer's market, sorry.
Yeah.
If you have nothing to hand out, you are boring. So like you have to have a grab and go.
Sounds good.
Pull on everyone's marketing skills.
Just another idea to throw out there. I
Yes,
mean,
please.
Another big waste in, you know, it's not just for the recycling, but it's also the food waste that happens there. If we could do a composting demonstration
That'd be
with
awesome.
the live
That'd be cool.
materials.
One.
I mean, it'd
That's
be
a
pretty
great idea.
simple and
Yeah.
a carton away, put it in my backyard or whatever. you know.
Love it.
But, easy.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Lisa,
Yeah.
you got that one done?
Yep, got that one down. So we have chicken, bee, duck ordinances, the rain barrel kits, and then compost demonstration.
To your point though, recycling, one thing that's been on the board's
wait
agenda for
till
a
we-
couple of years,
let's
yeah,
wait till we
we'll
get to
talk about
workshop.
it goal,
Yeah.
yeah. But, you know, something to, even if we just supplied a recycling bin, like I can wheel it back to my house, I don't really care. Like, something like that would also be impactful too, to show the farmer's market as well, like there is a need. We filled up this entire bin today. Is this something we can partner on? So, there's lots of levels.
That sounds good. We can discuss that further at our next meeting. For future agenda items, we have the farmer's market and then the 2024 SAB goals. Is there anything else that people have in mind
For the official meeting.
for the official
For the
meeting?
official meeting, yeah. So like SAB goals I put on there because I figured after tonight's meeting, there might be different things that we need to talk about next
Yep.
week or next month.
I like it.
Or again, and that's kind of a fluid one, right? So it's important for us to get items in there. If there's potentially going to be something for next month, it's a good way for everyone else that looks at our agenda, or looks at your agenda, instead of it coming up a week before the meeting. This is a good way of getting it out there before that. So always be prepared for the meeting If you have something in mind that you're wanting to discuss, we can, talk about it today, get it on there. We'll have it on there for sure next month, right?
That sounds good. So the next SAB meeting is Monday, March 4th at 6 PM. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.